The following episode is brought to you by Poison City Brewing, proud makers of Durban Poison Cannabis Lager, the beer that invites you to live your poison. Guys, it is another episode of Sludge Underground podcast. You got myself and Marcel on the show as the host, and today we have a super awesome guest. A lot of you will be very, very familiar with who he is and basically his history. You know, one of the biggest names in South African, music, and this person has been at it a very long time. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we can basically proceed and just learn a lot more about him. Graeme, nice to have you on the show, bro. Please let the people know
Hey
who you are.
guys, how's it going? My name's Graeme Watkins. I'm a professional musician, or magician as I like to call it, because I have pulled some rabbits out of hats in my career. I'm also an actor, TV presenter. I've got my own show, and I also own an audiovisual events company as well. So one of my many jobs.
The first thing that comes to mind, when you mention all those things there to me is, how does one man, juggle all the things that you mentioned, like what sort of goes behind all that?
I think it's I have a very good diary called my wife, who is extremely efficient at what she does, and she kind of makes sure that I arrive at my various appointments each and every day. She also helps me out in various parts of my life. For example, she obviously manages more specifically my my music career. So she makes sure that I because I've also got 3 projects within that as well. So I've got Graeme Watkins project, and then I've got Swing City, and then I've got my solo project as well. So we just make sure that, she makes sure that I arrive at the right one at the right day and the right time. I pick up the microphone and do what I do. And then from an owner's perspective, from the events company, that's sort of a relatively new venture that I've sort of dipping my toe into. I actually just bought the company just before COVID hit, just before lockdown. So it's been quite an interesting little journey that has. And then with regards to the acting and stuff like that, the nice thing about that is that I take that on when I have my more sort of quiet times, and when I feel like a little bit of a change, then I redirect myself back down the acting stream again, and then do a little bit of that, and then pull out. I never sign long contracts, just because I like being involved in new things all the time. It keeps me interested, and I like to think it keeps me relevant as well. And then from a hosting perspective, I've got a little online show, not too dissimilar to what you guys are doing now, but it's more sort of where yours is a podcast. Mine is sort of based in the digital online show, webisode kind of thing, where we interview musicians and creatives and just get to pick their brains and find out what they're all about. It's called the Marshall Takeover Lounge, and it's on 6 p.m. On a Wednesday night. It's great fun. So you can go check it out on Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and all the various things.
Speaking of the Marshall Takeover Lounge, I was actually watching one with Yumi and the Harmony, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I had a chat with them this week as well, and really, really rad guys. And I really love what you're doing.
Fun bunch. Thanks so much. Yeah, it was kind of born out of an idea of once COVID sort of struck us, we were all like, well, what do we do now? And I know a lot of people like myself who rely entirely on the arts as a means of making a living. We were like, well, what do we do now? How do we remain relevant? How do we remain top of mind? And how do we make sure that South Africa doesn't forget us? Because South Africans are notorious for, allowing things to sort of leave their frontal lobe quite quickly. So just, sort of staying in people's spaces and just reminding them all the time that we're here. And that we are still alive, and that we actually still require their support. Everyone in lockdown sort of, curled up and became a bit of a hermit crab in a sense, where they rightly so, made sure that they safeguarded themselves, but also forgetting that there were various industries that rely quite heavily on, people making an effort to come out and being social. So we were like, oh, how do we how do we remain social but still get into people's lives and their living rooms in a sense. So, and that's how Marshall started. And the Takeover Lounge kind of became this little rebellious sort of wannabe MCAR, holding the torch of MCAR in a sense. And it's grown beautifully, and it's got such lovely legs now, and loads of people are sort of seeing it as a new way of consuming their favorite celebs in a sense, and the people that they enjoy listening to, and picking the brain of an artist. I think that's one of the coolest things you can do. I love chatting to fellow musicians and fellow actors, and finding out what their methods are, and what makes them tick, and how did they come across their melody lines, or their lyrics, or their harmonies, or what is their process? Do they start with the chord first, or do they start with the lyrics first, or a melody first? Where do their songs start? And I think you grow as a musician that way as well. So it's kind of a nice thing too, because for me, it's feeding my creativity as well.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that concept. You definitely, as you said, you learn and you grow from talking to other musicians. It's essential to the growth process as an artist. And if you're sort of isolating, if you're isolating yourself, and like you said, becoming a hermit with it, you will never grow. You will only have yourself for scale, which is very detrimental to yourself as an artist, your creativity, and just the general flow of things. I 100% agree with that.
Absolutely. I mean, you have the capacity to become quite stunted if you, like you say, you don't expand your roots. If you look at a tree, if you restrict a tree's roots, it remains a tree, but it just becomes a dwarf tree, and it's a little bonsai, and it's a nice thing, and it never expands. It never gets higher to its ceiling. Whereas if you allow those roots to go and discover other trees and get other scents and flowers and fruits, then you become so much more of a dynamic individual yourself as an artist as well. The people that I listen to and look up to and enjoy consuming, I look at them and they're always experimenting, they're always growing, they're always looking for what's the next thing, whether it be picking up a new instrument, whether it be trying a new genre. I think that's such an essential thing as a musician, a young musician, is don't just go, oh no, I'm hip hop, that's where I'm staying, or I'm rock, that's where I'm staying, or I'm blues, that's where I'm staying in it, and that's what I want to be for the rest of my life. If you look at each genre sort of, and you compartmentalize them, the specifics of those genres, yes, they might be things that make them exclusively that thing, but they draw inspiration from so many other sources. And I think once you realize that, you can then go, oh, well, that's how jazz came to be, or that's how blues came to be, or that's how hip hop came to be, or R&B. They're all mutations of taking other genres and putting them together. So I think you're doing yourself a great disservice if you don't explore other people and their creative spaces and methods as well.
Yeah, bro, and I really enjoy what you said there. One of the names that you dropped there was MCAR. And if we actually look at MCAR and sort of the impact that MCAR had, I look at MCAR and back during the MCAR days, and I think to myself, wow, that was like alternative music in South Africa at its utmost like height and stuff. So I want to know where Graeme, where was Graeme Watkins during the MCAR days when everything was just booming?
Yeah, man, that was the height of, I think, of the Graeme Watkins project in a sense. That 2011, 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's kind of when the MCAR peaked, and like you rightly said, alternative music, alternative rock, Afrikaans rock, the indie scene really exploded. You had bands like Shadow Club, Zebra and Giraffe, Fanko Cartel, Van Volken Tusties, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, the Borneboom sort of made their fifth or sixth comeback. So these bands were instrumental in fueling a generation of the live music scene in South Africa. I think the first time they really experienced it. I mean, we had our forefathers. We had, Boo, we had Springbok Nude Girls, we had Hog Hoggity Hog, Just Ginger, again, to name but a few. And those guys sort of made the live scene, they primed it for us, and then we sort of took it and made the live scene work for a living, and gosh, we had some serious times, and the MCAR generation, it was fueled by MCAR, it was stimulated by MCAR, and again, it's that idea of having something in your space all the time, being top of mind. And I remember we used to have MCAR play all day long in my house. It was literally, that was a channel that was on, and it played and it looped. And I think if you got a video on MCAR and then you got maybe to the top 5 on the MCAR playlist, you knew that you were getting massive traction. And then you had the MCAR Awards, which celebrated music, and in many regards, and you can ask so many musos, the MCARs were almost seen as more of an accolade than the SAMAs were, and it was because that had its fingerprints, and its finger on the pulse of sort of popular culture in that time, and the kids and the voices that wanted that music. It was almost more relevant, and if you got that and you got the nod from the MCAR generation, it was almost, it was amazing. You knew you were nailing it.
Just before I pass on to Marcel, I want to get perspective from you. Do you think, it would be a possibility right now, looking at 2020 or even maybe beyond, the pandemic? Would you say it is a place that, the alternative music scene or South African sort of rock music scene would be able to get back to, the way things were back then? Or is it sort of just like over now or impossible?
I think it's a bit of a, okay, so where do I start? All right. So I think, yes, we can get back to that, and I'll explain why, but I also think it's highly unlikely that we'll get back to that exact thing. Firstly, what the MCAR gen was, the live music scene was at its, I think, its most tactile. People people wanted to be in bands. They wanted to get out there. There was a culture that was sort of almost born from the live music scene. It gave rise to the skinny jeans, the long hair, moustache growing Afrikaans Pretoria mullet, the sort of slick back indie comb over, the purple and things. And not saying that those weren't there before. I mean, obviously we had the 90s and the 80s, but it was a whole new generation for South Africa more specifically. It was the first time SA had its own sort of music heartbeat, in a sense, that people actively went to these things. And I'm not saying that they didn't go before. For me, perhaps it was just because I was alive and kicking in that scene at the time. Whether we can get back there, I do think there'll be a resurgence after COVID, getting back to the live music scene. I certainly think that people will want to go and consume it again. Will they want to consume it in the same way? I don't even know if that kind of music will ever. It might surface again, perhaps in a generation's time. But I think COVID has given rise to a whole new musician, the kind of bedroom muso, the guy that sits in front of his laptop. He's a bit of a jack of all trades. He plays a little. He might be really great at guitar, or he's really great at maybe even just piano, or maybe he's not any. Maybe he's just great at programming. But he programs the bass, he programs the guitars, he programs the synths, and he kind of gets an all-round feel for it. And then he self-produces and he self-mixes and he self-engineers and everything, and he self-sings or she. And that's going out. And now, how does that person package he or she's live scene? So, and I think it's going to change very much. So I think that they're going to be a little more intimate. There won't be so many people there. Perhaps the venues will change. So I think it's going to be very interesting. But I do think the live scene will come back. But I think it's going to be very different to what we used to.
Hey, beautiful, man. Marcel.
Yeah, like the whole concept of it coming back to where it is, or not being the same. I honestly believe it's a cycle. There's an ebb and flow to things. Things will come and things will go, and it will repeat itself. So, like you said, it will come back, but it will obviously be different. There'll be a different generation. There will be different bands. There'll be different genres that will have the highlights. And looking at it now from your standpoint as having an events company and all these sort of things, being so involved in the music scene, what would you say is something that could be sort of key to that sort of resurgence? What sort of artists would you point out as that sort of thing?
Look, I think first and foremost, once the old adage, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think that SA is due do a resurgence of the music scene, you must understand that before COVID hit, there was already a dip, there was already a lull. Live venues were closing down because foot traffic was less and less. Whether that was due to the booze ban already being, crunched. People weren't drinking or driving as much. People were just reluctant to go out, The old Durbanites are notorious for that. If it rains, then the guys are like, nah, bro, I'm staying inside. Oh, we're not going anywhere, dude.
I've been there. I've watched this happen.
Yeah, you've seen it happen. I mean, you come to Durban and it's hit and miss, I still think the best gig we've ever done was Splashy Fen. One of the best gigs I've ever done. It was mental. That tent was on its way from like 2 minutes away from collapsing. But then you look at the Joburg music scene as well, which has always been sort of the epicenter of the industry, in a sense, from a corporate perspective and from a live venue perspective. You had the Venus Flytrap and to name a few, and you look at that scene, and the foot traffic wasn't there anymore. People were reluctant to go out for whatever reason it was. So it was harder and harder to be a professional musician. So what a lot of the big bands and the established artists were doing were relying quite heavily on corporates, and that's where the money was being made. Big corp would throw on this massive extravaganza, and you would feel like a rock star, and there'd be pyros and lights, and there was no expense. Nothing was left out. And I think that's kind of where the music scene went for a long time. But I think now with COVID being the complete absence of it, and people can only watch you stream from your bathroom so many times before they want to grab you and feel you and touch you, and take a sample of your sweat home. So
that sounds like a story, man. That sounds like there's something. That sounds like
specific.
That's way too specific. It sounds like there's a personal story.
No, they are, but they are. They're like in the live scene, like people just there's like a general lack of like person's personal space, bro. And they just want to they want a piece of you, and they like ask you for random things. Like one day I came off stage and someone asked me for my shirts, and I didn't have another one, and she was like, it's fine, it's okay. And I'm like, that it's sopping wet and it's basically just covered in my DNA. And she's like, even better. And she basically lifted the shirt off me, and I walked around shirtless for the rest of the night. And well, thankfully it was the middle of summer, but she just basically, I was burgled,
You
from
were
my own
robbed.
shirt. So I was robbed, yeah. But she did buy a CD as well, so I was kind of like, oh, that's cool. You can have the shirt. Yeah. So but I mean, but that's what makes being a musician so special. It's one of the aspects. I mean, I see your profile pic, you're a guitarist as well. So that live scene, that communication, that dialogue with the audience, there's a tension there. It's a tactile response. Even though there's gap between you, there's something there. There's electricity. And you want that. And I think people that haven't been to a live concert in a while, once they go, they're like, sure, I had the best time of my life. Was so amazing. Oh my gosh, the nice was the music. But then they realized that actual fact there was an experience there. It was over and above just going and listening to music. Because when you watch a live band or you watch an artist perform, there's so many things that are stimulating your senses. Because when you're seeing music create, when you watch someone create music, it becomes that much more impressive, and you see the skill level of an artist, and you then become more infatuated with that person's work, and you go, wow, I loved it. Or maybe you didn't like the artist beforehand. How many recording artists that you've gone, oh, I don't really dig this guy, and then you see them after you see them live, and you're like, whoa, shit, okay,
I can relate.
I dig this guy. I really dig this person now. You know what I mean? So I think from that perspective, there will be a resurgence. And again, how it's going to be packaged is an entirely different thing. I think it's going to be a lot more kind of pop-up parties. It's going to be a lot more intimate. I think the 50 kind of 150 people maximum. I think it's going to be pretty exclusive. Do you guys remember the Lucky Strike parties?
I think that was much before our time, eh?
Yeah, you got really young for that. So there used to be like when cigarette brands were still allowed to like kind of, push the marketing budget a bit. Stuyvesant, Lucky Strike, Camel used to have these private parties where if you smoked the brand and you logged in a number, they would call you and you could win an opportunity to come and be a part of one of these cool parties. And then they would have the most incredible kind of DJs there or live bands there. I went to one where they had made the entire place into an ice cave, where there was like guys snowboarding. It was mental, guys. Like, honestly. And then I did an amazing race with Stuyvesant. It was incredible. The camel parties as well were just unreal. So kind of like what Castle Light do in those like kind of cooler than now kind of Castle Light underground parties. These guys were pioneering it. The smoking brands are doing it. And I think it's going to get back to that, where you arrive at a location, you only get the location on the day. You can't share it. You get a QR code, you rock up, boom, and then all of a sudden you walk into this little place. It's blacked out, and inside is a wonderland of awesomeness. And then, you know, you'll obviously have the best night of your life in there. And I think that's where parties are going to start going again. And I hope so. It's kind of cool. Will people go back to the live scene? Yes. I'm going back to it again. Sorry, I keep on hopping from thought to thought. And you asked me as well, what kind of musician there is going to be. Was that a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of the guys are kind of in the digital space now. You are able to multitask. So you can maybe, you know, have a little MIDI controller, maybe a little sample pad. You're able to file open your vocals and maybe a guitar, and you can kind of be a one-man band thing. And maybe you've got a drummer on an SPD pad, sort of doing his whole thing, kick-at snare thing. Kind of packaging like that. I don't think the big band thing is going to happen that much more unless they are already established. I don't know when last I've heard a kid say, I'm going to band practice. I mean, that's all we did as kids. It was like you bunked as many classes as possible, and when Friday came, you're like, cheers mom, you were out, and you went to band practice, and you came back on a Sunday, and you thought you were awesome, but you were so terrible. But I mean, the things that you learned in those band practices and that dialogue, you know, it's one thing being a skilled muso, but it's one thing being able to have a dialogue with another musician and do that with the same kind of skill. You know, I've played with many guys who can run circles around you from a technical perspective, but when it comes to playing in an ensemble, they fall short because they've all been about me, learning their thing and becoming so skilled and so technically versatile. But then you put them in a live scenario and they don't quite cope. So yeah, I think that's why being in a band is so essential, because there's a whole aspect to playing live. You know, I know that my for example, Graeme Watkins project, I mean, we've been playing together now for 12, 13 years now. And I know that those guys have got my back completely, and they know the same for me, and they almost know exactly when I'm about to do something, or even if it's completely unrehearsed, they're almost anticipating it, you know. And from a live perspective, you couldn't want anything more than that. To completely and utterly trust in three other individuals that are there, and they're punched in, they're locked in on you like a homing missile. And you know that at any moment we can go anywhere and we're all on the same page. And I think that's, as a band, that's what you want. And as a young musician, that's what you should aspire to be, you know, because that dialogue and that trust is what's going to make the difference between a cool gig to oh my gosh, if I need to see that band again gig, because that band changed my life forever. And I had the same experience with 3 bands that I've watched in my life, where I've left there going, actually 4. I left there going, that was a masterclass, and I need to see it again. One of them was Just Ginger, from a local perspective. One of them was Springbok Nude Girls. I was just like, my jaw was on the floor. A band that blew my head off my shoulders was Boo. I was like, I've never in my life seen anything like that. A 3-piece that sounded like there were 18 people on the stage. It was just unreal. And that was long before the time of tracking yourself as well. You know, a lot of guys play with track to fill it up. This was just 3 people, and it sounded like there were 18 people on there. And the other one, which I just was like, I actually don't know, if I was speechless. I don't even think they spoke, was Muse. I saw Muse live.
Imagine.
And I was just, my mouth was open the whole time. I don't even think I enjoyed the concert from an entertainment perspective. It was just like watching a masterclass. It was watching 4 guys do something just revolutionary, from a lighting, from everything. And also Coldplay. I mean, Coldplay was another one. Coldplay is, I think, the best concert I've ever been to. I'm a huge Coldplay fan. I'm a huge Chris Martin fan. I think he's one of the great songwriters of our generation, although he'd never say it, but I think he is. Yeah, just a masterful musician. And when you watch bands of that caliber, and you look at people like that, and you walk away with a sense of awe and wonder, that's what makes it so special. Because yes, you can go, oh, I love listening to them, and they make me feel a certain feeling. And then when I'm in the bath, I listen to this guy. When I'm here, I listen to this guy. But when you see them live and you experience that energy, you're like, you become, I think, you fall more in love with the band, and you fall in love with their skill as much as them as individuals as well. And you want to be their friends at the end of it. You're like, yeah, I just want to marry one of you.
I want your shirt.
And I want your shirt drenched in sweat.
You know, just looking at that, what you actually mentioned there, prior to us talking about, you know, the bands and whatnot, you know, that whole situation with the actual shirts and the sweats and stuff, bro. As someone who is very much in the public eye, bro, I mean, you've literally seen your career from like start, you know, to where it is now. And you've literally been on our TV screens like over and over. You know, for someone who is in the public eye like that, there, bro, would you say you maybe sometimes you stuck between maybe a rock and a hard place when it comes to interacting with your fans? I mean, in a situation like that one, obviously, you know, you did end up, you know, giving her, you know, the shirts and stuff. But I mean, do you find that maybe you have to, you feel some type of way in terms of like you have to always
have difficult interactions, you know, like.
Yeah, and always put on this nice guy, even when you have a bad day.
Yeah, look, I think the rule of thumb is something you have to accept, is you are part of the public domain. You are, in a sense, a product from a brand that you are trying to create. You are a product, and people see you like that. Because you're in people's spaces, whether it be digitally, whether it be on Insta, Facebook, whether it be on TV, they feel like they know you, and they feel like they want to know you, and they feel like there's an ease about them, and there's potentially an approachability factor. And when you are a part of the public space, you have to realize that there are going to be certain interactions where you're going to have to smile and grin and bear it, because that is just the nature of the game. If you think about it, like if somebody comes up to me and goes, "Hey, G, you know, how are you? Can I have an autograph and a photograph?" And I turn around to that person and I say, "I'm having the worst day of my life." And I turn around to that person and go, "Sorry, man, I'm busy. Please leave me alone." Had I taken 5 minutes out of my time, regardless of how I felt, and given that person 5 minutes, that 5 minutes is going to translate into potentially a lifetime of happy memory for that person, and is going to translate into that person then going, "Hey, I met this guy, and this was my experience with him, and this is how it made me feel, and I'm happy." Flip the coin, and all of a sudden you've got me going, "Sorry, I can't deal with you right now," even though they don't realize the context in which I'm having to deal with said information, because I am a human being and I do have mood swings and I do get upset and I feel feelings, and that is the nature of my genetic makeup. But they don't understand context. And if they're going to leave there with me going, "No, please leave me alone," they're going to go, "Oh my gosh, what a horrible person." And they're going to have a lifetime of a bad memory. So you've got to see it from that perspective. And you know what, when you go on stage, you have to put your personal issues in a little box, leave it on the side of the stage, and go, "I'm going to come and deal with you now, but now I've got to go and Sasha Fierce my way through this whole thing." And then you become somebody else on stage. And I do. If you meet me in a social context and you meet me on stage, I'm two different people. On stage, I'm this mad cat, crazy, jumping off drums and filled with energy. And on stage, I'm a little bit more quiet. Off stage, I'm a little bit more quiet. I'm a little bit more reserved, a little bit more soft-spoken. And I'm actually quite an introverted person. Not many people know that. They see me and they're like, "Oh, this," because I project this image of kind of madcap, crazy, let's do this whole thing. But I do get tired. They see that, and they automatically assume that I'm going to be that kind of person. And I think sometimes people go, wow, is something wrong? And I'm like, what do you mean? When they meet me, they're, are you something wrong? And I'm like, what do you mean is something wrong? And they're like, you're not, they expect that same kind of bottled energy that comes from that's kind of like all the time. And I say to them, you know what, if I had to run on that kind of energy all day long, I'd have a burnout and I'd be a wreck, So, and I socialize for a living. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So when I'm expected to go and have a social life, it becomes quite hard for me. I'm being very honest here. I think it becomes incredibly difficult because sometimes I just don't want to leave the house. Sometimes I just want to be in my own space with my two little boys and my wife, and experience some level of normalcy. I was saying off air before we started, I'm going through a lot at the moment as an artist, as we all are, somebody who's having to rely on a lot of instinct at the moment and trying to find a space within the COVID kind of lockdown scenario. And we are at a point in our lives now where we're like, is the music industry gonna survive? Are we gonna survive? How are we gonna do this? I mean, we've been locked in lockdown for 5 months now. We've been shut down for 5 months. We were the first to get closed down, and I think we're going to be the last to be reinstated. And that's why if you listen to on the 5th of August, Wednesday, I think it was yesterday, was the light essay read.
Yeah.
And that was to raise awareness for everybody who doesn't realize the severity of the situation, that our entertainment industry is at a point of collapse. So I am now, sorry, to illustrate my point, is that I'm now up in a little bush house. We've got a little family bush house, and it's up in Louis, 3 hours from the Mozambican border. I'm here right now. And I'm just having some family time and trying to recalibrate and trying to reassess. For the future is uncertain, but at the same time, I'm certain that it's going to turn out okay. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm already seeing that light, but I do need moments where I have to pull myself out of the quote unquote celebrity life and the public eye. And just be normal Graeme, who grew up like all of us, who does things like everybody else, who cooks and cleans and does things like that. And I just want to be normal me with my family, away from everything, in isolation with my in-laws and my mum, and just be as normal as possible and try and, work things out.
I really appreciate that there's just so much insight and just so much that we are learning about, that perhaps maybe wasn't set to light, maybe to your fans and whatnot. And, one of the things that you mentioned quite a bit, Swing City is one of the projects that you mentioned. Obviously you want to get into that a bit, but later on before we end off. But looking at just, more on a human aspect with what you were saying, was you mentioned your wife, your two boys and whatnot. And, with all the attention and all the fame, how do you sort of, obviously you are having times where right now you're on holiday with them, you're taking some time off. But I mean, with a person sort of, as busy and with as much as you've got on your plate, how do you ensure that you spend enough time, with the family, with the boys, with the wife and whatnot?
I think it's actually more simple than you might think. I might not have a lot of time to spend with my kids, but when I do spend time with them, I make sure that it's quality time, and I make sure that I'm as present as I possibly can be. The tough part comes is when you're tired. I think that's the hardest thing. When you're tired and you're trying to apply yourself to anything, it becomes quite a difficult task. But my little boys, they're obviously quite young. It's 7 and 4, so they're high energy, high octane little buggers, and they're my offspring. So that's my karma coming back with 2 legs and 2 arms and a mouth. So. But they're wonderful creatures, but they do require a lot of energy, and I have to make sure that when I'm with them, I can give them as much energy as they require, however difficult it might be, because this is there, it's so important for me as well, because it makes me feel good, and it resets me having time with them and playing with them. And my wife is incredibly accommodating. She's been with me now for 18 years, almost 19 years, and she's come along my journey with me. And in fact, she is probably one of the driving factors behind my success, and I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for my wife. So from a position of strength, I am so fortified on that side. So my right hand lady is also the person that I can go to and say, I'm struggling, or I'm broken, or I've got writer's block, or I don't know what to do, or geez, try this out. And I bounce my ideas off her, and I bounce my my songs off her before I send them to the band. And she's an incredibly honest individual with me. She doesn't beat around the bush, and I respect that. And she also knows when I'm at my most vulnerable and my most sensitive. And I think that's an incredibly comforting thing as well, that I know that I've also got somebody who's got my back off the stage. So I've got guys that have got my back on the stage, and I've got somebody who's got my back off the stage. And I think once I've managed to find that balance, I realized that it's going to be okay, because it can be quite overwhelming sometimes. The public eye is a very unforgiving space as well. You can say the wrong thing and all of a sudden lose your entire career. You can have an opinion like the next man, and all of a sudden it's the wrong opinion. So I think from that perspective, you've got to be very clever about how you package yourself, who you want to be, who are you wanting to project, what kind of image. If you look at, for example, certain members of the hip hop fraternity, they've got a very specific persona that's kind of like, it's chains and metal, and they can say what they want to say, and kind of they get away with it because it's packaged within a right context. If you look at the hard rocker guys with the mohawks and the leather jackets and the Marilyn Mansons and the Ozzy Osbournes and so on, if they can do certain things, and it's okay, But if you are saying the wrong thing in the wrong context, and you're not packaged in the right way, people automatically go, hold on, that doesn't sit right with me. And then all of a sudden you get called out as a fraud, or somebody who's, you've got to be in the right context. And South Africa is very, I don't want to say unforgiving like that, but they're very aware of that. Is that if you are a certain way and you do a certain thing, if you do it, if you offend the SA public, they'll cut you down. They will certainly cut you down. But at the same regard, if you represent the SA public with good grace and good manner, then they uplift you, and they support you unconditionally, which is great.
Yeah, that is very beautiful, bro. And I really like the fact that you're able to balance out the both, and you do have support back home, which is a huge blessing. Marcel?
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Just the story about how your wife is such a driving factor in your career. It's really inspirational. Like, every artist dreams of having a companion of like that. It's someone who supports them and drives them through. It's probably the greatest aspect of it. And having the person that you want to spend your life with, having so much passion and so much, how do I say, guiding factor in that light is absolutely fantastic. It's such an inspirational thing to hear.
Just on that, I'm lucky as well, because she is in the industry in the sense that she's an artist manager as well, and she sort of took what she learned from me, and she's grown that now, and she's branched out into other sort of artists. She's got a couple of artists on her book as well, and she also does she works for what's that company called? It's escaped me now. But she does. She's got a British-based company where she does sort of sync placements and stuff like that too. So she has got her heart and her finger on the pulse of the SA music scene as well, and the global music scene more specifically. So from that thing, is she's a good people's person as well. So yeah, she's a great lady.
No, that's wonderful. What is your kids are brutally honest in so many aspects. What are your kids' opinions on your music career and what you do? Are they fans of it, or having grown up with it, or is it something that's kind of just always been there and doesn't really faze them?
Yeah, they love the fact that dad sings for a living. And they love when dad goes on stage, because they're like, they want to come up on stage with me. My youngest is particularly musical. He's got a phenomenal ear, actually. He's got his little microphone and his guitar, and he's like, what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Now I'm going to sing, Dad, and you're going to sing with me. Come sing with me, and I'm going to grab my microphone, and we're going to sing together. And he bangs on the drums and stuff like that. And my little studio, he's always fiddling around and trying to do things. And when I'm producing, they come and sit with me, and they play on the piano while I'm stuffing around and doing some things. So from that perspective, they really are fans, and they love a couple of my tracks. Some of my tracks, they're like, this is nonsense, and some of it's like, this is really cool. And they are brutally honest, and I do run a lot of my tracks past them. I'll be like, what do you think? Particularly my oldest boy, Jude. I'll say to him, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, it's cool, Dad. Or I don't like it. It gets boring halfway through. And I listen to that. My little one, I can do no wrong. He's like, this is the best thing I've ever heard, Dad. You're awesome. So yeah, it's great. But I think it's really great to see how they interact with me when I'm on stage and they watch me. And I like to think that they're proud, that their aging father is still up there and going millies up on stage. So yeah, from that perspective, they are fantastic, and they're wonderful sources of inspiration to, maybe not necessarily literally, but I'm when you're imparting sort of life lessons onto someone, and to little kids, you become emotionally more aware of yourself and your interactions with the world. And that's really helped me as a songwriter. I think somebody who can take an emotion and go, okay, cool, this is what I'm feeling, this is how, because you have to kind of explain to a child why certain things feel and react a certain way. And being able to do that for a child, if I can do that for a child, I can do that for anybody. And I think I've used that in my music, definitely sort of more recently, sort of adapting that to my music. Yeah.
That's cool. Like, Nasiphi, I can't wait for your daughter to be old enough to have an opinion on us and hear what her thoughts are on what we do. Like,
yeah, dude. Considering how brutally honest children are, and what Graeme just said as well, it's nice that you're able to also get some insight, from your very own children. So it's something really special to experience. Yeah.
But also, what I really enjoy is I really enjoy watching my kids enjoy music, because when you create music for a living, when you hear a song for the first time, you automatically, boom, you're unpacking it, you're taking it apart, you're listening to the
Yes.
bass line, you're listening to the guitar line, you're listening to all the production elements. You're like, oh, that vocal take is nice. Oh, what did they do there? I wonder what mic they used. So you become this like kind of like, you dissect it, and then you just watch somebody enjoy music for music's sake. And my wife's like that. She just loves music for music's sake. And she's not particularly musical person, but she understands how a song gets put together and so on and so forth. But that's never the first thing she listens to. And when I would watch them enjoy music, I look at the song that they're enjoying, and I kind of try and discern what makes that song successful. I'm a massive Billie Eilish fan. I think that she's become she's the new millennial muser. She's the new bedroom muser. Her and Phineas, I think, are gonna be the front runners of a new genre, a new type of person, because the genre is going to encapsulate the artist. It's going to be an all-inclusive thing. I spoke about it earlier, and they're kind of spearheading that. And my kids really love them. They love that. And that other one as well.
Dance Monkey.
Yeah, Dance Monkey. They love Dance Monkey as well. So I look at that and I kind of think to myself, like, what is making this? Where's the heart and where's the soul? What's making this work, you know? So
Mm.
that as a songwriter, sort of trying to take those elements and utilize them. Yeah. So from that perspective, it's really great to have a kid as well, because you remain you remain relevant. Because I do have a tendency to go back to my old things that I like and go and listen to those all the time. I'm a bit of an old soul. I like sort of the older genres, as you I'm sure can tell my Swing City side, but I do like the older genres very much.
You know, just from what you just said there, bro, and you know, one can really see that, you know, as a musician, you know, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, and you know, this actually leads me to something that I heard, you know, a couple of years ago, actually. Funny enough, that got me super shocked, and you know, I haven't always been sort of like a television person and whatnot, but I was very shocked when I found out that there was a time when Graeme Watkins, you know, graced the stage of Idols, bro. And I was just like, no,
I
like
know.
and it's sort of like, bro, walk me through that. You know, back then, you know, going on Idols, what was the expectation? Had you already been sort of in the music sort of background? And I did see an interview where you were mentioning that, you know, you were a waiter before you got into Idols and whatnot. Just, you know, walk me through, you know, Graeme Watkins, you know, deciding, listen, I'm gonna go to Idols. What was the plan, and what sort of
Yeah,
outcome?
there was no plan. I so my wife's a Durbanite, so I'm an honorary Durbanite. But I'm originally a Cape Townian boy, and I was up on holiday with visiting my then, well, soon to be in-laws. They weren't my in-laws yet. And my wife and I were still dating at the time. And my mother-in-law said to me, "Yeah, would you ever do Idols?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know, why not?" Thinking, "No, I'll never do it, whatever." And the next day, I got dropped off outside the Durban ICC and was like, "Cool, go for it. I've extended your flight. You guys are going back. You guys are going back a week later," which ended up becoming not a week later. It ended up becoming 3 weeks later. And yeah, my Idols journey began, and I kind of entered it like I said, now with no real expectations. And I was a musician before, but I was a singing waiter. And it was at a restaurant called Stardust in Cape Town, and it taught me so much. That restaurant taught me so much, man, because I got to sing to a new crowd every single night. I emceed the events as well, so um, to sort of elaborate a bit more, we're normal waiters, everything works thing, but every now and then your waiter gets up on stage and does something cool, like they either act out a monologue or do a magic show or sing, and it seems like quite a ludicrous thing, but it was a massively successful place. It still is, still going, and it's incredible. And you go there and you get it. Once you're in the space, you're seeing a young creative who's not just waitering your tables. He's actually got a cool talent and a cool skill. And I really honed my skill there. And I was an amateur songwriter at the time, and kind of was in a band with Jamie Fall, who actually ended up becoming the producer for Jeremy Loops. So kind of, learning our craft there. He also worked there, a guy called Richard Brookman as well, who then moved to the UK, and he's a musician over there now. So this was a kind of like a mini university for us. And then I studied university at the same time. So I was doing my acting degree and then kind of working at Stardust, and then took the whole Idols journey and went through it. And it certainly quantum leaped my career for me. It definitely put me in the space of the public eye. I mean, you can't buy that kind of publicity. Ended up coming second, well, third, but then there were two winners, so I got bumped up to number two. And that certainly put me in a space, but I was hell-bent on forging my own path and forging my own career. It took a year before I released my album. And the Idols brand is an incredibly strong brand, and it's a very difficult brand to shake. Not that I wanted to shake it, but I wanted independence from it. I think that I needed to work as hard as possible to make sure that I forged my own career and wasn't entirely reliant on the fact that I was Graeme from Idols. And I still get that. People come up to me and they go, "Hey, you Graeme from Idols." It's cool. You know what? I am Graeme from Idols. Certainly am. And to that person in that time of their lives, I was on television once a week in their house, and they voted for me, and they gave me an opportunity. And I think, if anything, I've done them a great service by putting their faith in me, using their faith in me, and putting their money where my mouth was, in a sense. You know, they spent money on voting for me. So and I've managed to make a career out of it, and I'm eternally grateful to those people that did do that. And even the ones that didn't sort of buy into me in the beginning, because those people later became fans. So many people came up to me afterwards and would say, "Oh, you know, I didn't really get you, but now I do. I see that you are a valid artist," you know. And the nice thing about it is that I think I have succeeded in that, because one of the biggest things is when you come out of Idols is a lot of the artists that are here and have been working as hard as possible to working their hands to the bone to become a relevant artist in this country, which is not an easy thing to do. And they kind of look at you and they go, "Oh, this kid's got his, like, you know, got his 5 minutes of fame, and now he thinks he's more famous than anybody else." But one thing I never did, and I never took that for granted. And now those people that are amongst, you know, the greats in this country, I can call my friends, and they treat me like an artist in this country. You know, then they treat me as an equal. And I think that is incredibly special, you know, from the guys that I looked up to, you know, Art Matthews, Arne Carstens, and to name but a few, that I can call them friends, you know, and like I said, these guys are mates, and it's great. And I think Idols did a great thing for me by putting me in the public space. But the hard work started after the competition. The competition was difficult, but staying relevant and staying in the public eye is even more difficult. And hopefully I'm doing an okay job at that.
You know, I'm very happy that I'm one of the people that, you know, discovered, you know, through you know, the Graeme Watkins project. Like I said, for me, I had no idea that you'd ever been, you know, on Idols, and I'm very much proud to say that.
I'm gonna jump in and agree with you then, as I also had no idea. Carry on, son.
Yeah, yeah, like.
I think you guys are the first. I think you're the first people that I've ever known that hasn't immediately gone to the Idols question first. It's quite refreshing, actually.
It's probably our age there. That's, you know.
Oh, but it's cool. But it's cool because it's nice. Because it's nice for me, because I feel like I've imprinted on a generation that didn't hold that against my photograph, you know, hold that next to my photograph and go, "Oh, that's the only reason why." It's nice. Thank you, lads. It's you've made an old man feel good.
Dude, can I be even like 100% honest with you? Like, generally with Sludge, it's more of, like we said, like more of the natural approach and stuff. So there's barely any research. But I took it upon myself to go onto YouTube and check out, you know, any clips and stuff for the first time, just to confirm if this was even real, bro. And when I sort of like, oh, okay, then it was. But I'm just glad that that was not my first sort of perception of you at all.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, I was terrible. But I was terrible. I got through on sheer personality. If I look back at those clips, I actually cringe, because I'm just like, oh, goodness gracious. And it was the first time I'd ever worked with in-ears, and I was just like pitching, and it was disgusting. It was disgusting.
So one thing about being a musician is that, like, because if you practice, if you grow, that you could look back at something from even a year ago and be like, "Ooh, what was I doing?"
Oh,
here?
yeah. So, yeah, I can't listen to my first album. Because I just all I hit are flaws. You know, my guitarist and I, Rainer Zili, we produce a lot of the stuff, and then Matt Marinas, my drummer, and then Chart, my bassist as well. You know, we're all producers in our own right. You know, and we sit and we listen to that and we're like, oh, I can't. Why do we do that? Oh, let's just re-record everything and remaster. But then again, there was a lot of heart and soul in that album. I mean, that first album, Corridors of the Mind, did immense things for us. You know, not just locally, internationally as well. And there must have been something there. But I suppose as an artist, you guys will know, you become hypercritical of yourself. And I think That's both
definitely.
a good and a bad thing.
Yeah, in fact, my introduction to you was through, Corridors of the Mind. And, I had a lot of favorites. Well, like one of my all-time favorite South African songs now, ever, is Bloodshot, dude. I know it's probably
Oh,
typical because it was one of the hit songs, but my goodness, dude, I remember that just reminds me of a time when I had to travel from home every morning to varsity. I stay in Hillcrest, had to travel, take taxis. I had my earphones on all the way to varsity duty, and dude, all I'd be playing is just Bloodshot, and it was just like,
oh, man, magic, man.
and
We
what
all,
went through that? Yeah.
we almost scrapped that song. You know that?
Whoa, how come,
Yeah,
dude?
yeah. I don't know. We were just like, it was kind of like one of those songs we were like, is this working? Isn't it working? What do we think? And we had to kind of like A/B it against a couple of other tracks that we were kind of playing with. But it made the cut. I think largely because of my wife and a lady called Mel Conradi who plugged who was plugging our things, and my drummer. My drummer was like, "This is the best song he's ever heard." And I'm like, "Really?" And even now I listen to it and I'm like, I tell you what, it's a great song to perform live because it's kind of like taking a horse out for a walk, and then all of a sudden it just hits this thing, and it's a gradual process, and all of a sudden you're in full sprint, a full gallop rather, and you're going to that finishing line, and it ends da 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 do do da do ga, and everyone just like, oh, it's such a great song to perform live. And yeah, I mean, the song itself was like one of those tracks that just kind of happened. And that melody and that lyric, I actually had that lyric in my mind from when I had just left matric. And that original line was, these bloodshot eyes of mine are crying the wine that Jesus turned to stone. And I don't know why it was like that, but it was like a poem that I'd written a while back, and I can't remember the context of the poem. I just remember that line for no other reason. I don't understand why I said Jesus turned it to stone. I don't know. Okay, but anyway, then one night we were performing this thing, and it just and it's kind of like syncopated drum thing, and I was like, this is something in you. And Reno started the guitar line that and I was like, hey, this is cool. And then there's all of a sudden, then it was that, oh, these bloodshot. I was like, yes, bloodshot eyes. That's what this is about. And then it was like, we're crying the wine, and I kind of adapted it to the idea of a bad relationship or a hangover of a night of passion that is this reoccurring thing, that it's like this dysfunctional relationship, but this night of passion kind of bottles up and sums everything up. They fight, and then they made love, and then it was great, and it was also the worst night but the best night. And it was kind of very interesting in that sense. So I kind of, it was a borrowed lyric from a poem I'd done in matric. So quite an interesting story, whether it's relevant to anything or anyone. That's irrelevant.
My favorite thing about this whole section now is that I love how musicians communicate things to each other. It's just like,
yes,
my girlfriend hates it because I'll be sitting with Naz, I'll be sitting with a guitarist, and I'll be like, yeah, so it's that part that goes da 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 da, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and she'll be like, how did you get anything from that?
Yeah, because you just know. I mean, we talk like that as well. It's complete. It is. You're like, dude, go back to the section. That ba da 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 da, not the ba da 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 da, that ba da 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 da. And you're like, oh yeah. I know exactly. Okay, cool. And then everyone goes there, and you're like, yeah. It's basically, it's like almost like just it's like a form of articulation. It's a form of emphasis. It's like where the So yeah, I love talking like that, dude. I love it, and I love talking in bass as well. Talking bass is the best.
Just give us a little example there, bro.
So no, but when you go to a bassist and you're like, instead of going dum dum da 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 do 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 dum dum, go dum 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 da 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 dum dum, and I love talking bass, because bass for me, in my mind, I'm a bassist. In my brain, I'm like, forget everything else. I'm the best bassist in the world.
The thing about also talking bass is sorry. The thing about also talking bass is you also tend to have that natural groove that bassists have. There's something about playing bass.
I'm groove driven. In my mind, I'm a 6'4" dreadlock black man who's just like, I'm just, groove is everything to me. I'm like, yeah, just step aside, world, here I come, you know. But yeah, my bassist thankfully is way better than I could ever be. But yeah, in my heart and soul, I'm a bassist.
For me, one of the final questions, you know, with Corridors of the Mind, you know, did that sort of how much of an impact would you say that had in your career or rather the Graeme Watkins project's career, you know, getting as big as it did and becoming sort of like a household name in the South African music scene? I say this is one of the last two questions because a follow-up would then be a focus on Swing City. So yeah, Corridors of the Mind, bro, when you guys made and released it, did you expect it would have this much of an impact?
No, you know what? I'll be brief. So yeah, I mean, Corridors was massive for us. Corridors, we did not see it coming. We actually performed, going back to the Idols thing, we performed Music Affair, which was our biggest song on that album. It's still the gift that keeps on giving. I think it's still number one in Namibia. It was for so long, guys. And we performed that on Idols. I got asked to come back to kind of showcase what I've been doing, you know, and we did that. And my record label, Sheer, saw me, and we're like, we're going to sign these guys. And that's when Mel Karadi sort of approached us, and we're like, do you have a body of work? We're like, yeah, we have a body. We've been working on it. We played it, and I mean that album took us. We toured America on that album. We performed. We actually represented South Africa at the Muse Expo with that album, and played alongside the same Foster the People's management saw us. We recorded then some of our second album in LA, in New York, with a guy called Jeff. Yeah, incredible stuff. That album did amazing things for us, and yeah, gave birth to the Graeme Watkins project and Graeme as a brand. Yeah.
Hey, that is beautiful, bro. Marcy, before you get to Swing City.
No, man, I'm good. Carry on there, Naz.
Sweet, bro. Yeah, man. So yeah, City, bro. You know, I'd like for you to just, you know, walk us in, or rather, walk us through how it is sort of working with Loyiso and Nathan, bro.
Oh, it's the most irresponsible group of people I've ever met in my life. They are it's. I tell you what, if there was ever a fun band to be with, it's Swing City. The nice thing about Swing City is that it started out as a complete passion project. It was myself and Nathan were talking at a braai one day, and we were just saying how much we love jazz and how much we love swing music specifically. Both of our dads were in bands, jazz bands growing up. And we were like, wouldn't it be cool to do that? But like, let's do like a quirky rat packy thing. And they were just like, yeah. And then our managers happened to be at the braai and overheard us, and they were like, you guys are doing this. We're like, no, man, we're not doing this. This is a joke. We just let us eat our bori and go. And they were like, no, you have to. And then the next day, Loyiso Balo's manager gave us a call, and it's like, hey, I hear you guys are interested in teaming up with Loy. Would you, we're doing it Thursday next week. So we're like, what are you talking about? We've got nothing. And then a week later we had a gig, and we're like, guys, we literally don't know what we're singing. We have no idea. And then we had a crash course, and the chemistry was almost immediate. We bombed out harmonies. Loyiso is a great, from a technical perspective, he's a great vocalist, and he's also a great vocal coach in terms of harmony. And he kind of slapped his harmonies together, and he's like, guys, cool. We all found our respective spaces. And then Swing City happened. And then we got into studio and we started arranging our own stuff. We originally arranged some Graeme Watkins project stuff, some Lonely State stuff, and then something from Loy's many songs. He did Blow Your Mind at the Music Affair, and then we did Techno Band as well. And then, yeah, Swing City started and began, and that just was another journey, because we didn't. We were just kind of going with it, thinking it would be a fun corporate band, and it ended up becoming something that completely consumed our lives for 4 years. I mean, even Graeme Watkins' project took a back seat, and we were just like, we're going to do this. And we then had a 7-piece jazz band with the 3 vocalists. So it was a 10-piece band. And if you haven't seen it live, guys, I'll tell you what, it's something else. So it's proper naughty jazz. It's good stuff because it's fun, because we kind of nothing's rehearsed really. It's all improv, the dialogue, and it's just such fun, tongue in cheek. It's a real kind of, I don't want to use the word rat pack, but it's the only thing that people can really associate you with. And it is quite rat packy in the sense. And we've got another guy called Lloyd Kele, who often comes in as a 4th member. So it does get fun, man. And the shows that we do are always sold out. We've been offered to come to Montrose Jazz Festival once COVID's lifted. So yeah, man, great fun. We were about to perform with Jacob Collier at the Jazz Festival this year, but that unfortunately didn't happen.
Yeah, dude, that's really beautiful. You know, the way it even came together and everything is really dope that you're also giving your fans some insights in that, bro. I personally enjoyed that. And yeah, listen, man, just moving forward, what can we expect from you? You know, what's coming up? What does Graeme Watkins have in the pipelines? And then, yeah, after that, we can then close out the show.
Sweet. Yeah, man. So I've just released my first single of my solo album. It's called Out of My System. I went into a bit of I've been writing an album over the past 2 years. I've just released my first track now called Sober. There's 2 versions of it. There's the radio edit, which is the kind of more upbeat version, and then there's the acoustic version of it. I urge you, if you haven't listened to it, please go and check it out. It's great. I actually shot the music video in lockdown with my wife and my mum. And it's quite an amazing body of work, because it's the most honest I think I've ever done as a writer. And it's all me. I've kind of written everything together, written everything myself, and then kind of done a lot of the post stuff with the band. So Graeme Watkins project still plays with me. But this is my solo body of work. And I'm going to be releasing until I get an EP next year. And then I'll release the full album, hopefully middle of next year. Yeah. And then from a business perspective, you know, still keeping the events company going. If you got, and just enjoying life.
Hey, that is super, bro. So, yeah, if people want to get in touch with you, you know, in closing, I think it would be best for us to close out with Sober, you know, it being, you know, your latest, you know, release. Really stoked on that.
Yeah.
You know, close out with all your handles and whatnot. I just want to personally thank you, bro, for coming through to the show and letting us, you know, have this interview. We've learned a lot about you, and I hope that everyone else that's been listening has learned a lot about you, bro.
What a pleasure, boys. And please keep on doing what you're doing and flying the SA music flag alive. I think people, you know, one of your great responsibilities is to keep the SA music scene going. It's one of the most important things you can do. And I think supporting local is not just lacquer, it's imperative.
That is 100%, bro. And yeah, so
that's a line that's going to stay with me, actually.
Where can we get in touch with you, bro? Social media handles and everything.
Yeah, so it's Graeme Watkins, Graeme Watkins, and you can get me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Insta. What's that other one that I'm still trying to get a hang of, where you have to sing? It's a TikTok. Disaster. What's it called? TikTok, man. That thing. I'm too old for that. But anyway, give me on TikTok as well. It's Graeme_Watkins for most of it. But yeah, I'm sure you'll find me. Otherwise, you can just Google me.
For this, the podcast will be going up on SoundCloud, via Sludge Underground, on Apple Podcasts, Sludge Underground Podcast, and Spotify, Sludge Underground Podcast, on social media, Facebook, Sludge Underground, on Twitter at Sludge031, and on Instagram at Sludge Underground. As for myself, it's at Zwane031. And Marcel, who are you online?
God, I just wanted to say that you sound like you were in fast forward there, Naz.
Sorry,
sure.
that was impressive.
Quite impressive. You're like a rapper, dude.
Yeah, he actually is, though. He actually is.
Are you? Yeah. Are you a socials tag rapper? You could just rap your socials in a song. It hasn't been done before.
Well, before we run out of time here, I am on Twitter, YouTube, as well as Facebook as Marcel Smuts. On Instagram, I am Thorns of Sludge. You can catch me on any of those platforms. And yeah, check out the YouTube channel. I've been doing a lot of collaboration.
All right, that is awesome. So, guys, it's been Graeme Watkins. Thank you once again for coming through, bro. We're going to be closing out with Sober. Are we going to be playing the acoustic version or the normal sort of studio version?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's play the radio version. People can go and check out the acoustic version.
All right. Sweet, guys. So until next time, it's bye for now. Please do enjoy. It's Graeme Watkins with Sober.
I've been going crazy, yeah. And even though I wanna talk to you, you don't wanna hear me. But I know you can't stop. No, you can't stop. Even though you're lying there alone in your underwear, you can't stop. Even though I give you my life. It's me that you're craving, yeah. And even though you won't admit the truth, I think you need saving. You can't stop, no, you can't stop. Even though you're lying, crying through those lonely nights, I know you can't stop. Even though I give you my life. When you find a man who won't destroy you, call me when you wanna call me.